When we think about the history of geography, our minds usually jump straight to the European Age of Discovery, right? We immediately picture ships sailing out of Spain or Portugal, or maybe we think of ancient Greek philosophers sketching out those very first maps. But what if I told you that centuries, and in some cases millennia before any of that happened, scholars in the East were already calculating the exact circumference of the Earth. They were mapping out complex ocean currents and even inventing tools to measure earthquakes. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to completely challenge that standard Western-centric narrative of history. We are going on a really fascinating cross-cultural tour to uncover the absolutely immense geographical contributions of three ancient powerhouses: India, China, and the Arab world.
Okay, let's dive right into this by looking at a single word, the ancient Sanskrit term for geography, which is Bhugal. Now, the language itself actually acts as this incredible time capsule of scientific knowledge. Bhu translates perfectly to Earth, and Gol means round shape. Just think about the profound implication of that for a second. The very word used in ancient Indian text to describe the study of the world literally translates to the study of the round Earth. This instantly proves that ancient Indian scholars didn't just casually stumble upon the idea of a spherical planet. That concept was fundamentally encoded into their everyday vocabulary and their entire scientific perspective right from the very beginning.
And you know, this brilliantly illustrates another key point. In the ancient world, geography was never just about drawing lines on a piece of parchment. It wasn't some isolated subject that you studied all on its own. Instead, it was an incredibly holistic, deeply inclusive field. To understand the Earth, these early scholars fundamentally believed you had to understand the heavens. So ancient geography was actually this beautiful, complex blend of astronomy, advanced mathematics, and cosmology. For them, you literally couldn't study the dirt under your feet without also charting the stars up above your head. They studied the cosmos to understand their exact location on the ground, essentially trying to comprehend our tiny planet's place within the vastness of the universe.
So, here is our roadmap for this explainer. First, we'll look at the roots of early geography. Second, India, cosmos and mathematics. Third, China, observation and administration. Fourth, we'll explore the Arab Golden Age. And finally, number 5, we'll be comparing these three ancient pillars.
All right, let's kick things off with part 1, India, cosmos and mathematics.
So early Indian geographical thought wasn't just about figuring out where a river flowed. It was heavily driven by deep philosophical inquiry, astrology, and highly advanced mathematics. I mean, who are the masterminds behind this? We're looking at truly brilliant minds like Aryabhata I, Bhaskaracharya, and Brahmagupta. And these guys weren't just philosophers. They were rigorous mathematicians calculating exact planetary positions. Even more practically for geography, they were actually figuring out how to calculate latitude, longitude, and precise cardinal directions. Then you've got Varahamihira, an absolute titan of early science. He wasn't just explaining solar system theory, he was meticulously detailing the physical divisions of the Earth and actively studying catastrophic physical events like earthquakes and volcanoes. We even see the early seeds of physical sciences with Acharya Kanada, who actually proposed an early atomic theory. The sheer intellectual output we're talking about here is just staggering.
So how did they actually visualize their world? Well, take the Puranic world map, for example. It's this absolutely fascinating conceptual view of the Earth divided into 7 islands, or dweepas. Right smack in the center, you have Jambu Dweepa. Now, at first glance, this might look highly mythological or purely symbolic, right? But it's actually grounded in reality. These ancient names align with real geographic regions. For instance, parts of Jambu Dweepa and the surrounding areas correspond to real-world locations like the Pamir Mountains and various regions across Southeast Asia. It's a really brilliant example of how ancient Indian geography seamlessly blended deep cultural and spiritual symbolism with actual physical geography.
Moving right along, we arrive at part 2, China, observation and administration.
Now, let's virtually cross the Himalayas and shift our focus over to China. Between the years 200 and 1500 AD, the Chinese approach to geography was radically different from India's. While India was looking up to the cosmos, China was looking right at the ground. They were driven by this highly pragmatic, state-driven need to map vital trade routes and administer a massive, constantly expanding empire. A perfect example of this sheer ingenuity is the invention of the world's first seismograph by the brilliant scholar Cheng Heng. Just think about that for a second. An instrument to detect the direction of earthquakes invented centuries ago. And alongside his mechanical genius, Cheng Heng proposed this really fascinating naturalistic theory of the universe, visualizing it as an egg. In his model, the sky was the shell and the Earth was the yolk suspended right there within it. Kind of makes you rethink your morning breakfast, doesn't it? We also see the integration of Suan's 5 elements during this time: water, fire, wood, metal, and earth. For the Chinese, geography was all about observing these natural forces and understanding how they interacted on a highly practical, physical level.
Because the Chinese Empire was so impossibly vast, they had to be incredibly systematic about how they managed it. Imagine the world's most intricate spreadsheet, but entirely managed with ink, paper, and thousands of dedicated scholars. They basically relied on 5 main pillars of geographical methodology. First, they created massive state-sponsored encyclopedias to just hoard knowledge. Second, they maintained these meticulously detailed local gazetteers, recording the specific history and regional geography of different areas. Third, hydrography was absolutely crucial. They needed highly detailed mapping of rivers, coasts, and water routes to successfully manage trade and agriculture. Fourth, they recorded folk customs, giving them detailed descriptions of everyday people in both known and entirely unknown southern lands. And fifth, they kept rigorous anthropological records. When you put it all together, Chinese geography was quite literally a masterclass in organized, state-sponsored data collection.
That brings us to part 3, the Arab Golden Age.
During the 8th through 13th centuries, cities like Baghdad truly became the glowing centers of global intellectual exchange. So why exactly did the Arab world become the undisputed masters of geography during this era? Well, it was a perfect storm of 5 key factors. First, there was an innate cultural curiosity and a massive drive for scientific inquiry. Second, the unifying bond of Islamic Brotherhood allowed for relatively safe passage and a shared language across vast distances. Third, and honestly, this is a huge driver, the religious requirement of the Hajj pilgrimage meant that millions of people literally had to travel across the known world to reach Mecca. That kind of necessity breeds some serious geographic knowledge. Fourth, they controlled extensive, highly lucrative commercial trade routes connecting the East and the West. And fifth, they were fearless oceanic navigators, completely mastering the seas to expand their reach and influence.
The absolute epicenter of all this knowledge was the House of Wisdom, or Beit al-Hikmah, established over in Baghdad. In what is just a monumental achievement, Caliph al-Mamun directed scholars there to calculate the Earth's circumference. Do you know what their result was? Roughly 20,160 miles. Keep in mind, that is incredibly close to the actual figure. Not too shabby for working with shadows, sticks, and 9th century tools, right? They weren't just passively compiling old knowledge, they were actively pushing the very boundaries of physical science.
But hey, geography isn't just about math and measurements, it's about the actual human beings who walked the earth. Consider Ibn Battuta for a second. He embarked on this absolutely epic 21-year journey that took him across multiple continents, from Egypt and Syria all the way over to India and China, documenting everything he saw in his famous Rihala. Then you have al-Biruni, a guy who authored 27 books on geography alone. Let that sink in. We also see al-Idrisi, who back in 1154 AD created these highly accurate world maps that would essentially become the gold standard for centuries to come. And of course, we absolutely cannot forget Ibn Khaldun, who went way beyond physical maps to essentially founded the entire study of human geography and human settlement. Okay, let's tie this all together in part 4, comparing 3 ancient pillars.
We've covered some truly incredible ground today, from the math-wielding astronomers of India to the meticulous bureaucrats of China, right through to the globe-trotting map-makers of the Arab world. Pulling all of this together into one clear framework, it's fascinating to see how a culture's core motivations entirely shape how they measure the world around them. Look at their inspiration. India was driven heavily by philosophy, math, and astrology. China, on the other hand, was driven by administration and the need to map trade routes. And the Arab world was largely driven by religion, particularly the Hajj pilgrimage, alongside global exploration. Because of these vastly different motivations, their map styles differed wildly too. India produced highly cosmological and conceptual maps. China produced practical, spatial maps specifically for local governance. And the Arab world produced these vast travel route maps and global climate atlases. Yet, despite taking totally different approaches, scholars from all 3 of these regions achieved true, undisputed mastery over their geographical domains.
Which brings us to our final thought. If these Eastern civilizations mathematically proved the Earth was round, invented seismographs, mapped the oceans, and accurately calculated the planet's circumference literally centuries before the European Age of Discovery, well, how much of our standard geographic history is missing the bigger picture? It really makes you wonder what other incredible scientific breakthroughs are hiding in the ancient texts of the East, just waiting to be mapped out. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today, and remember, keep questioning the history you've been taught.